Joe joins us right now. He's a legal analyst and former U.S. Attorney to the District of Columbia. Joe, good morning, sir.
Hey, Joe.
Good morning.
Great to have you with us. The Democrats are desperately hoping to keep the Mueller report alive today without actually interviewing Bob Mueller. Instead, they're bringing in John Dean, the former attorney who served as White House counsel for Richard Nixon today, all as a part of an effort to do what exactly?
This is an effort to dramatize the hilarious Mueller report, the Andrew Weissman report, and to make it look as if it's real. Unfortunately, the Democrats have chosen a convicted felon as their star witness, following on the Michael Cohen convicted felon witness, who was a complete flop for them and committed perjury in front of their committees. John Dean is sort of a pathetic Watergate figure who was convicted for conspiracies, lying, perjury, you name it. And to have him be their centerpiece of explaining this is really rather bizarre. And the reason is they can't get anybody else to come and talk about it who's worth anything.
You know, can you, if you would, engage in this comparison that Democrats keep making between Richard Nixon and Donald Trump? Because these were two very different events, yet they keep kind of calling them the same thing and suggesting that this is obstruction of justice from both men.
Well, Nixon ordered the destruction of evidence and literally conspired on tape with people to violate criminal laws. Donald Trump did absolutely no such thing. And in fact, the Justice Department reviewed his conduct as published in the Mueller report and concluded Rod Rosenstein and the Deputy Attorney General and the Attorney General William Barr reviewed it and said that both under factual and statutory applications, there was no obstruction of justice. He didn't have the corrupt intent. The acts which he engaged in were not obstructive. Nothing ever happened. The investigation was concluded. Mueller filed his report. What we have is a disappointed office seeker in the case of Mueller and Weissman. And so this bears no resemblance whatsoever to Watergate. It's a cheap comparison, and bringing John Dean in just makes it cheaper.
I've got another disappointed office seeker for you. This weekend, Hillary Clinton responding to the Mueller report. Here's what she said.
Obstruction of justice occurred.
She said you can't walk away without acknowledging that, although Mueller himself didn't conclude that, right?
Well, that's what's really the supreme irony of Hillary Clinton, who ordered the destruction of 30,000 emails directly related to a subpoena that had subpoenaed them, one of the great acts of obstruction of justice by a government official in history, which James Comey decided to forgive and not even deal with in his fake investigation of the email server that Hillary Clinton maintained illegally outside of the confines of her office. I mean, she really is someone who continues to make it easy for people to support Donald Trump.
So, Joe, I'm still looking for a predicate of a crime in all of this. And Mark Meadows stated, and my sources tell me it's true, probably even more condensed than 60 days, but Mark Meadows says that Mueller knew within 60 days, I would argue he knew within the first month, that there was no predicate of a crime. And that seems to be remain a black hole. Along with that, they apparently were doing very severe and exact tracking of people using GPS technology during the investigation. So lacking any credible predicate, which is something Mueller has never addressed, how does one justify these extraordinary acts of the extended investigation of the Mueller probe, as well as apparently during the Mueller probe using these very severe tracking devices or mechanisms as part of it?
Tony, this investigation of the president was a fraud from the start.
Oh, no doubt.
It was designed to cover up for the illegal activities that preceded it by a number of years.
Right.
She was supposed to win. Nobody was ever going to find out about what they had done. There is no justification for what they did. And the best thing that President Trump ever did was appoint William Barr as Attorney General. He's going to get to the bottom of it. He has already said that the answers that he has gotten are unacceptable, incomplete. They make no sense. They don't jibe. They don't fit together. And what that tells you is that everything that everybody has told the American people about this from the beginning has been a lie.
Right.
And now it's going to be undone.
Joe, there's a report out from John Solomon at The Hill this past week about Konstantin Kilimnik, who is a Ukrainian businessman who was working with Paul Manafort, according to the Muller report, linked to Russian intelligence. Although the United States government, Solomon reports, often relied on Kilimnik as an intelligence source, a trusted intelligence source for the State Department, for example. What did you make of that report?
Well, first of all, John Solomon is one of the finest reporters in America. He's the one who deserves a Pulitzer, not the clowns at the New York Times and the Washington Post who have been given the Pulitzers. But Kilimnik was, in fact, an asset of the United States Department of State. He regularly provided detailed intelligence information about Russian activities in Ukraine. He was not, as was portrayed by Muller in the report, an asset to be used by the Russians against Americans. This is another disgraceful depiction in the Mueller report, which really draws into completely negative territory the credibility of the Mueller report. Kilimnik was an asset of the United States government. He was not an asset of the Russian government.
So, Joe, do you see Congress actually getting their act together and demanding Mueller come discuss some of these glaring errors we're now watching and noticing?
I expect the Senate to do so.
Yeah.
The House, of course, will not because it's run by the Democrats. But more important than that, Bill Barr is going to bear all of this.
Well, it's long overdue, and I'm still amazed that no one has asked the question about why Mueller did nothing to define more clearly
Because his
this
job
field
was
dossier.
not to conduct a criminal investigation. His job was to frame the President of the United States for an impeachment inquiry. And when you look at his report, you see how pathetic that effort was.
Joe diGenova, always great to talk to you. Thank you so much for your help this morning.
Thanks, Joe.
Hey, you bet. Thanks, Bob.